Hi, welcome to the Like-Minded podcast. My name is Monica, and today we're joined by Dr. Tiiu Põldma over Zoom, who is a one-of-a-kind leader, author, academic, and interior designer. Welcome.
Thank you.
I think the first question to go right into it would be, how do you start a career like yours? You have done so many things, it seems even unimaginable for one person to do all of it. What was the first step you took that led you to a career like yours?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. As I think about your question, I think, well, the career I had did not start that way, shall we say. I had several life experiences that led me towards choosing interior architecture, interior design as a profession. And but even then, I had thought I was going to head in one direction, and about 4 or 5 years in, I was headed in a different direction. I thought I would be working in a company my whole career, and about 5 years after I graduated, I realized that I was probably more of an entrepreneur, and I opened my own business. So I graduated in 1982 from TMU, and I opened a business in 1987. And and from there, uh, really, if you told me today that I would have the career I had, or sorry, back then, if you told me that what I have today, I would have never, how to say, I would have never really thought that I would have the career that I have. It's gone in quite different directions, but at the same time, it's been stimulating and very interesting. So I'm very glad for it. But so
How did the realization look like? Did you start a job and just not like working for somebody else, or where did you get the inner feeling that, oh, I must go my own way?
I believe it was I one of the things that I learned and that I turned around as a teacher and taught students was that in the early years of your career, and when I mentor students and professionals, I say the same thing. You really need to keep a broad perspective of different things that you're doing. I got into when I graduated in 1982 from university, out of 36 graduates, only 6 people got jobs. It was a very bad recession, and it was very difficult. Not far away from where we are now in terms of difficulty, in terms of the recession and upheaval. The world was not in a good place, and so I was one of those 6 people who got a job. And then about 2 months after that, I lost the job. And then about 2 weeks after that, I got the job back. So it was an interesting kind of a ride. And I realized quickly that and the second thing that kind of triggered where I'm at now is that as I was working, I was given this advice as well, is try to get as many different kinds of experiences as you can. So that's what I was doing, working in small firms, large firms, working right on in my field at the time. It was really important to be in the construction industry, on the site, pragmatic, problem solving, creative thinking, problem solving, working on a site, creating environments that you create from nothing, from a drawing, that then become a reality. And I had to learn all this on the go. So that 4 or 5 years, I collected those experiences. And then it was more that I thought, no, I can do this. I can be on my own, and I can run a business. And I was given a couple of opportunities by clients who wanted to come with me. And that's how it started.
What do you think made you different in the sense that you talked that many people from your class were not employed and you were one of the six? How did you manage this, or how were you special, or how did you stand out?
I don't know because I was in the moment of having a job. But one of the things I think that I do have as a quality is that I'm I question things. I go after projects. I'm positive. I'm enthusiastic. I try really hard to put my best forward when I'm working. And I was willing to learn. and I was willing to go in. I wasn't willing to work for low wages or anything. It was a tough time, but I was willing to learn, and I was willing to be patient in the place I was at that time. So I think all of those things collectively allowed me and I was very persistent too in terms of getting a job. I was out there, as they say, on the ground looking for work, and I succeeded, and so I think all of those qualities together allowed me to survive a very difficult time. And then later on, when I was in business, the same thing happened. It was tough in the early 80s, and then again in the late 90s, and then in the 2000s when there was the financial crisis. And each time I found that my work was busier than those who were suffering. So I never had a problem managing the work that I had. So I think some of those qualities were there for sure, uh, to allow me to carry me through and getting the jobs.
How did the first years look like in your own company, or how did you manage to grow it? And what were some steps you went through, or maybe what were some mistakes you made along your way?
Well, I I was very fortunate that I had a couple of clients who had a variety of projects that they brought my way. So I didn't really um, have too much difficulty setting up the business, but it wasn't growing as quickly as I liked. So one of the things that I did was actually somebody I was working I had my own work, my own projects, and I also worked contract for other prominent designers in the Montreal area, because we moved from Alana and my husband, we met in 1982 in Toronto. Sorry, 1979 Toronto. We got married in 82, and we moved to Montreal in 85. So it was a whole new set of circumstances for me, getting to know the construction industry in Quebec, learning French, setting up the business. And so I was a bit concerned about if the business would grow. And so I supplemented I was given an opportunity to teach. So I started teaching part time and working full time. And actually, that teaching gave me an excellent perspective, because one of the things a designer needs, any kind of designer, you need to be able to constantly rev up your creative mind. And when you get too wrapped up in doing, I'd say, kind of only a job, then you're going to lose that creative sense. And so what have happened to me was that I needed that stimulation, and the teaching gave me that mental stimulation. So I would escape the work to go teach, and then I would go back into work, energized by the students and what we were talking about. And I found that that really helped me to grow the business, actually, um, and weather the different tough times that were there.
If somebody were to start an interior design company today from zero, what do you think would be like the biggest problems they might be facing? Like for you, you already had some clients who always want to work for you, but for
Mhm.
newcomers, do you think it's hard to find clients who stay with you, or in today's uh, economy?
Well, I think that yes, I was lucky that I had a couple of clients, but it was never guaranteed. You have to hustle. You have to be willing to show people, especially in today's climate and world, technologically what you're capable of. That what you offer is a solid and reliable service. But also, we do a service. Essentially, we're a professional like a dentist or a doctor, in that we are certified, and you have to have carry liability insurance, and you have to be responsible for your clients' needs, and understand what they want, and help take something that for them is like a dream and make it into a reality. And so with that comes a lot of responsibility. So I think anyone starting a business has to think about that, has to be willing to understand the way the market works. I don't think you should start a business if you only have 1 or 2 years of experience. A lot of designers finish school and think, oh, I can open a business. But it's very difficult to do that. And most contractors know they can tell a mile away if someone does not have experience in the field. So you really want to have that. And I think 5 years for me, now they say 3 to 5 years, but in my time, I felt I wasn't ready to take on responsibility like that. If you're really serious about it, you have to be setting up a responsible business, and that takes a lot of energy, time, and a lot of hours, a lot of and a balancing act between clients maybe that you want that maybe aren't paying as much, and then other clients who maybe give you more bread and butter projects. So you want to be able to be strategic in how you build your business, that you're able to obviously at the end of the day be an entrepreneur that earns some money and makes a name for themselves, because in design that really carries a lot of weight.
Would you do something different if you had to start again today?
Oh, maybe, probably not. I don't know. It's a hard question to answer because in my particular field, the experiences I went through were quite extraordinary. I was able to, as a contract designer, I worked with some of the top designers in Montreal, and I'd say some of the most fun I had was working for these great people like Jean-Pierre Villot and GHA. So I really enjoyed my time at these firms as a contract designer and working as an independent designer who would work in their office. And then doing my own work, I've done work around the world. I've been able to work in Australia, Canada, Europe, mostly USA and Canada, but still enjoying working the different projects I've done. And in my case, it's a little different than the average entrepreneur, because when I stepped into teaching, I added a whole dimension to my work that some people do, but not everyone. And it really changed the trajectory of my I became a different professional when I became a professor at university. So I had two professions going on, and but I was not a professor that was there since I was 25. I was a professor bringing my life experience as a designer to young students and showing them the way how they can develop their own interests in design.
What do you think are some aspects young designers think wrong about when thinking about interior design, or what are some things people might see wrong when they're just starting out?
Well, I think the biggest misconception is that it's a decoration, that it's all I do is, go into an environment and design a room, and that is not at all what we do. I've worked on small projects. I've worked on projects that are my variety of projects I've worked on. I mean, I've done over 400 projects in my time, and they've ranged from a healthy home for a lovely lady in Ottawa to 18 million dollar hotel and office complex out in Atlantic, Canada. So I've also done exhibition booths that are like bar lounges in Australia. So it's quite a variety of projects, and there's a lot more. There's a lot more involved than people realize. We are like I said, we're responsible designers. We take very seriously looking after our clients, and we deal with many different professions. We do a lot of coordination work. We work like the projects I've worked on are heavily, supported by mechanical, electrical systems and designing spatial organization of the environment, and then yes, at the end you do, put in the different elements that make the interior for the person, at a restaurant or an office. We have functions and issues we have to deal with, and then we want to marry that with how we aesthetically and want to enjoy the space. So that's a little more involved than what some people might think, and a lot of people don't realize how much work is involved. I mean, we do work like we work a lot with engineers and architects and lighting specialists, and I myself developed a bit of a lighting expertise, lighting specialty that I then taught So it's all part of how we create the environments that we design, so that people can have wonderful interior and exterior experiences. So I think that's the biggest misconception people have.
Have you ever had a project horror story or something that didn't turn out the way you wanted, or something that the client was not happy about, or was like, "Oh no, I thought it like exactly the opposite way," or is it always beautiful and
Well, it's not always beautiful. Sometimes people are not ready for uh, what the interior is going to be. But I can't say that anyone has ever been horrified or disappointed by what I've done. And part of the reason is that we do a lot of work, preparatory work. One of the probably most difficult parts of our job is organizing the contract and clarifying with the client what they want, what are their needs, what is their expectation of the project, how much is it going to cost, how are we going to organize their thoughts on the budget with the reality of the cost of a project. So if you're the type of person that doesn't work on those elements at the beginning and really ground the project in properly um, researched uh, information, if we like, then you're going to have problems with the project. And I think that one of the successes that I'm very proud of is that the projects have all turned out as they were supposed to turn out, in the sense of we satisfied the client's needs, they got what they wanted. There was one time when a client wanted something, and it was a federal project with the federal government, and and one of the problems you have is when you have your client who is your client might be different when you're signing a contract and working on the project than the person who's using the space. So in this particular case, there was one set of expectations that the owner had, but another one that the client had who was using the space. So there was a problem when we got there because the person wanted protection from the public. And then when we built it the way that she asked for, then she changed her mind. She said, "No, I don't need that." So it's sometimes you need to be very aware of the different people you're dealing with, and you almost need to be able to anticipate the problems that might come up. Now, that was an easy problem to fix because what she didn't want, we took away. But it was not, it would be much harder if you built a whole home for someone and they'd walk in and say, "Well, this is not what I expected." So you don't want that. And to prevent that, you, as a designer who is informed, you want to be sure that you lay the groundwork using collecting the right type of information, asking the right types of questions, understanding the client. You have to really get to know who the people are on the team and who the different people are and what expectations they have. And then you're able to put together a project that satisfies everybody.
do you think that sometimes it's really hard for creatives or somebody who really loves their specialty to go into business because all the other things like finding clients and managing the operations and like other things that might not be your passion come up and maybe you shift away from the work you actually want to do?
Absolutely. I think that one of the issues of being a designer is that I don't know, there are a couple different types of designers. There are people who are very idealistic. And so they go into a business and they really have like, this is how it's got to be. And there are very few people, very few architects and designers who can actually create that vision and go with the way that they think and that it will actually turn out. More projects are negotiating with the client to be sure that there's a coming together of your creative um, desires and their expectations. So I don't know if I answered that, but I think that you want to always stay true to your beliefs, but some people don't want to compromise, so it makes it a little more difficult. I think that one of the things that is important when you're an entrepreneur is to be willing to, or sorry, to be able to judge the situation and to be willing to take risks. And if something is not going in the way that you think, find a path that you don't compromise your integrity and the people you're working for get also a result that they expect.
How often, as an interior designer, it is okay to say, "Oh, I'm not interested in that project," or "It's not feeding my creativity," or "It's just like something that I want to stay away from."
Well, I don't know if it's a question of often. I think it's a question of each project you take on, or what I would do. I could speak for myself. I would take it on and I would really assess, do I want to carry this through right to the end or not? And there have been situations where I have refused projects. It's a lot. Often the reason is that the expectation that the person has of a project does not match um, how much they want to spend. Quite often, when I was younger and I would teach students, I would say I would give them examples of clients that I had, and for example, just generally, one client would say, "Well, I want to have this wonderful home, and I want to redo the kitchen, and I want to redo the whole, add it, put an addition, and create a whole outside inside environment." And then your question is, so what is your budget? Oh, $10,000. Well, $10,000 doesn't even get 1/10 of what the person has in mind. Same thing with store designs. Often that happened where the store owner is concerned about the bottom line. And so their expectations far outweigh what their budget is and what their expectation is on what they need to invest, not understanding that if you invest wisely in the creation of the appropriate environment nowadays, also online, the same thing holds, the mix of online and and as they say, the physical space. And it often that expectation was way higher than the amount of money they were willing to invest. And you have to make a choice: is it worth it to do the project or not? And so, yes, of course, I have refused some work. Of course, when I was younger, that was very difficult to do because you want to do every project and you want to be able to earn money. But you learn that there are some projects that are not worth taking on.
How long did it take for your business to reach its like peak time, or uh, um, what process was it, or when could you say that now I'm here, now I'm where I wanted to be?
I would say it was about 5 years after I started. It was in that period. So I started in '87. So I'd say the 1990s were pretty exciting for me. I had some really exciting work, and I got some awards, and I had my 15 minutes of fame with a restaurant called Toqué that I designed in Montreal, and I enjoyed a lot of exciting work I did. I worked out in PEI for about 20 years and built a beautiful hotel there. And then parallel to that, my career took off as a professor, and I was able to keep my creative work going when I did that and started research. But I think the '90s and the 2000s, it really took off about 5 years after I started the business, and then as I became more, it was interesting because I took on the teaching to supplement my full-time career. And then the full-time career informed the teaching. So I was able to bring practical and pragmatic experiences to the students as they were learning. And I used to teach business practices and I did lots of student work experiences and so on. And then as I moved on I decided at the age of 35 to do a master's and at 40 a PhD. And I became a full professor. And then I became more a professor and the business started to be less.
But how did you balance all of this? Or you have done so many things in your life. You have published 2 books, you have written many chapters, you have won awards from this place, gotten grants from another place, been internationally. Or how does that all come together? Or how did you do it all?
Well, it was a bit crazy, to be honest. I think sometimes I was biting off a little more than I could chew, but but I just have a lot of energy, and I also raised my son. Alot and I raised our son, and so and I made a point of being home as a mother when I could, more than not. So it was challenging. I was very organized. I've always been quite organized, and um, even when things were getting a little overwhelming, I was also the thing you didn't mention. I was also vice dean of graduate studies at the university, so I was doing all of these things at the uh, at the same time. So it was a bit challenging, but I think organization is a lot. We learned one of the things that helped me was that when I was at school, we learned um, a lot of time management skills. We learned how to be under pressure and what to do under pressure. And when I was at the interior design program, it was considered one of the more difficult programs at that time. And we did a lot of all nighters, and we stayed up all night. And I learned how to manage my time so that I wouldn't be overwhelmed. And I think I probably took on more than I could chew a few times, but I managed to get through it.
As a mother, what was something you always wanted your son to know about his life when he moved away from home, or what was some career advice you always told him, like, this is from my experience, it works, or what was some like important lesson you always wanted him to keep in his mind?
Is to always be happy, to always go after what you like, what you love. And my son is still searching around, figuring what he wants to do, and just to support him and give him options. And I think when you're figuring out what to do in your own career, you want to have options. And to me, it's tough if you feel you don't have any. So just taking one step at a time and trying different things and figuring out what works for you. I think and to be happy doing it. I think there's no point in pursuing all of these different life goals if you're not happy doing it.
Last question. If you had to give one piece of advice for somebody who sees your career as inspiration, who is just graduating from university, getting their first jobs maybe, and wants to go out and start a very successful business, do research, maybe go do grad school or do a PhD later, then what would you tell them where to start?
Well, when I years ago when I was teaching students, I had this lovely um, little two-page piece of advice from a designer named Paul Grillo, and it's to a young designer. And it's kind of an homage to those who are going out in the field and what are the things you want to think about. And like he says here, do not be afraid, live dangerously, avoid brainwashing of any kind, don't work for success. So to me, those are very important guidelines. Flout the rules if you can. Burn your idols once in a while and start all over again. The essential thing about the design process and being creative is that you want to try new things all the time. You want to try changing what it is that you do, and you want to do that, like I said, within the context of people who you need to work for. So you want to flout the rules when you can in a masterly way. What that means is you're not just throwing everything out. You want to seriously think about what it is you're doing and move forward. And then he says, acquire a masterly knowledge of your craft. And I think that, as like I said, when you first start out, you think you're ready, you've graduated school, but you're not. It's just the beginning, and you want to drink in all the knowledge you can while exploring all the exciting things you can do. And it's a tough kind of a job in a sense to do, because you want to be able to be free, but also be creative and be responsible and build things. And so you want to balance uh, the more responsible things that you're doing with having fun and staying at the end of the day, trying to stay young at heart. I mean, I like to think that I'm young at heart. I may not look it, but I feel very young still. So, at 65, it's a different road I'm on, but it doesn't mean that I can't create. I'm still creative, and I'm now doing other creative things. So it's so the journey you have in life is full of a lot of changes and movements in different ways. And as a creative designer, you want to keep that creativity going and be stimulated by life around you, which is what I suggest students think about when they move on, when they graduate and move into the work world.
Thank you so much for coming today and speaking a little bit about your career and giving advice for our listeners.
Oh, you're most welcome. It was a pleasure.